Mark Garman here with Determined. Hey, we have a very special guest tonight. As always, we have Sergeant Brady Johnson. Hey, so I just want to let you know that, I bring on guests every week who share their journey. And, obviously, as the viewer, you're not going to be able to relate to their journey. It's just natural because every journey is not the same. But I hope that you can grab one little snippet from their journey and carry it on with you because each and every week, that one little snippet is going to add up and it's going to become something beautiful. So, without further ado, here is Brady.
How you
Hey,
doing?
Brady,
How you doing? How you
let's
doing?
go, man. How's it going, brother?
All is well, brother. All is well. Another beautiful day. Most beautiful Thursday of the week.
There you go, man. There you
Most
go.
beautiful Thursday of the week.
Yep, yep. So let's go ahead. We have a few members in the audience that are saying hi to you. So hi Naomi, hi Salute. How you guys doing tonight? They're my loyal fan base. They come
Awesome. Hey,
yeah, they come each and every week. So Brady, why don't you go ahead and share with the community who Brady was before you had your stroke?
well, actually, when I was prior to the headaches and my stroke, I had served in the military. I was in the United States Air Force and in the Air National Guard. I spent 12 years, 4 months, and 1 day,
There you go.
and loved every day in my military serving. I love my military.
Thank you
Um,
very much. I appreciate your service. I have had, my dad, my father, my mother, my brother, my uncle, my grandpa, and
awesome.
I apologize if I missed anybody important to me, but they've all served in the military, so I have a huge family base that has served in the military, so I respect the military a lot and I appreciate your service, brother.
Oh, that is, man, brother, it's awesome. I'm very grateful. I have, a long line of military with my grandfather, my two uncles and cousins down the line, and a sister, and you know, actually, the military saved my life.
Yeah.
um, I, growing up, I was an athlete,
Hmm.
and I loved education. Those two were the biggest things in my life. My mother, she was a college educator, and
Okay.
my mother was a single mother. And growing up, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. That's my mother's uh, growing up town. So we moved there from Illinois when I was in eighth grade. Going into ninth grade, I moved there with my sisters, and we moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And when I was in Louisville, I learned to fall in love with Louisville.
There you
Louisville's
go.
a beautiful city, and played ball, played high school football, and played baseball. Academics were a little rough for me, but I loved education. And coming out of high school, I wasn't sure exactly what I would do. So I went to a small school called Lindsey Wilson College, and the coach there asked me if I would I want to play baseball for him. Well, he was
Hmm.
also a scout for the Chicago White Sox. So
Nice.
he said that he was impressed for me and about me. So he invited me to work out for the Chicago White Sox. And at that point, I thought everything was going the right way. Well, I had some, once again, some problems academically. Well, the next semester I spoke with the coach at University of Louisville, and he welcomed me with open arms to come to University of Louisville, and he told me he had a spot for me. And the next semester I came to U of L, and I had a 1.7 GPA.
Yikes.
Yes, yes. And I was able to come on campus and was able to see the team and hang with the team. But he told me, he said, Mr. Johnson, you're not going to get that opportunity to play Division One baseball, not this year.
Yeah.
I was quite frustrated,
Yeah.
and I love my family, but a lot of my family uh, had really come down on me because they knew that my mother was a single mother, and my mother worked hard, and they knew that an education through the route of scholarship would be the best way.
Right.
But I continued to throw that away.
Yeah.
And so I left uh, the state of Kentucky as a whole. And I knew that Illinois would be a good place. And the reason why I said that was at the age of 19, 20, my father lived in Illinois. So I knew I had friends in Illinois.
Okay.
Well, I had asked my father if I could possibly stay at his house. Well, that didn't quite go as planned as I
Uh,
thought. And so um, I have just been sleeping on my friends' floors,
mhm.
and that was not good. My uh, sweatshirt was my pillow.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I at one time was sleeping in a church parking lot, and I would go in the morning to wash up at the Gulf station. And my clothes and everything else that I owned was in the back of my car.
Yeah.
So I'd pretty much hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And at that point, I met somebody. I had a friend whose girlfriend worked at a restaurant, and he told me that his girlfriend wanted to introduce me to that manager. Well, through time, we ended up becoming friends, and she let me sleep on her sofa, which was great to me.
Yeah.
You know,
Better than the floor, right?
yes, and that's what I would tell people. You know, people were like, "Man, you need to, get your stuff together." And at that point, I was sleeping on the sofa, so to me,
Yeah.
that was win. And she had
Yeah.
a television, so I was like, "Win-win."
Yeah.
And, and I was still trying to figure out what to do. I
Yeah.
had started working in a factory, and I love those that work 9 to 5 and in a factories and things like that. But my mother would call me, and she would say, "Baby, God's got something more for you. You need to go back to school." So the young lady, she had a daughter, and we ended up dating. And her daughter, who to this day is my daughter, and we I started going back to school and working at the factory. I got the opportunity to work the day shift. In working the day shift, I took night classes. And one day I was walking down the hallway, and now I want to explain this to you. I was playing college baseball weighing 165. And when I met this recruiter, I weighed 215, standing at 5'5". So I wasn't too much in shape. It seemed like every part of clothes that I had were pretty much real tight on me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had seen him walk, he had a booth down the hallway. And I asked him, I said, "Sir, what would it take for me to join the Air Force?" And he said, "Take my card." And that was to me the best thing I'd ever had in my life, because I did pass the classes that semester. I took 2 classes at the community college,
Mm.
but um, the young lady, the baby, well, she was 7, but I joined the United States Air Force.
There you go.
Standing 5'5", I had gotten down to 215, and I went to San Antonio, Texas. And that night, at 22 years old, I think I was the oldest or the second oldest person in my flight. And there were 40 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they were yelling at us all. And I remember, once again, I love my mom, but my mother told me, make sure you put this in the bag and this in the bag. And I talked to my brothers who were in the Air Force, told me to put this in the bag. So I had a bag that probably could have fit a small kid in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody else had small backpacks. So I ended up attracting all of these TIs,
Mm-hmm.
who are the ones that yell at you.
Yeah.
And then they started screaming at me. And there was a guy, a TI, that stepped up to me and he said, "Son, you are fat and you're of color. So I'm going to call you Cannonball." Every time he saw me for 6 weeks, he called me Cannonball. And for every day, in the morning, afternoon, and evening, I served water and Gatorade. We call it Gatorade. We called it Base Aid. And then I got to eat. Well, I got about 2 minutes to eat.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated from basic training, my mother, the young lady, my grandmother, and my daughter, they walked past me. I weighed 157 pounds.
Wow. That's quite a drop right there.
Yes. My mother cried and she said, "Did they ever feed you?" So that to me, that was the best thing in my life,
Yeah.
because I liked regimen. I
Uh-huh.
liked doing it. I loved. People talked about I don't like shiny shoes. Well, you know what? I was the best.
Mm-hmm.
They said, run. I took those 2 miles like they were my last 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went into technical school, learning my job. And my job in the Air Force, I dealt with $74 million worth of classified items. So I had a lot of pressure every
Yeah.
day on my job. And I loved what I did. I then got stationed at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico. And Clovis, New Mexico reminded me of a small version of Louisville, Kentucky.
Ah, so you felt at home.
felt at home. Everybody spoke. You were at a red light. People that you didn't have to know, they would wave at you.
Mm-hmm.
People would honk at you and wave your hand at you.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved that. And I excelled in the military. I was Airman of the Year.
Nice.
Um, I got Airman of the Quarter. There were, of the 4 quarters, I got Airman of the Quarter 3 times. And I went to Saudi Arabia, and in 1996, I was involved in a terroristic bombing in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And that was another level of understanding myself.
Mm-hmm.
Over 300 people were injured, 17 people were killed. And it was a terroristic bombing,
Yeah.
and they were trying to kill us all.
Yeah.
And at that point, I told my troops, I said, I believe at this point, we need to understand that we're here for a job, not for education money. And I really had to help them get a grip on that for understanding. Because I tell people there are a lot of people that don't get to love our country or love the country that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
We're very fortunate. So that was in the middle of my 3-month tour.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got home, I heard stories on how people found out about the bombing. I think the one that rocked me more than anything else was when my mother, who was uh, in the summer, it was in the summer, and we were 12 hours in front of the United States. And my mother said she was asleep because summer classes were out, so she was not teaching. And she said my aunt Charlotte called her and said, "Helen, turn the television on." And my mom said she was sleeping. She said, "Why?" She said, "Just turn to CNN." And when she did, all that she saw was a reporter saying, "There's been a terroristic bombing. We don't know how many people are dead. We don't know how many are injured. We
Mm-hmm.
just know that they attempted to kill all of the airmen in the United States Air Force that are
Wow.
there."
Wow.
And my mother said she was looking at TV and she said, "I know my baby's in there.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how he is in there." And because our phone may have been tapped, we were not able to make phone calls out. And my ex said that they all got told, they got contacted, whether it be on their job, whether they were their exes, their wives were in school, or if they were at home, they were all given a call and asked to go to the theater. And when they all got in the theater, they said, "None of our people are dead, but we don't know how they are injured." And they said, "Just keep in touch with us, and we will keep in touch with you. You're released."
Oof. That's
And that,
intense.
yeah.
Wow.
And so I didn't get back um, on our on our soil for another month and a half. And I love my country. And at that
Yeah.
point, I realized how good my country was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our country, I love my country. And so I, at that point, I Ended up going in Palace Chase. That's where you finish out your degree. And that's what I did. The military paid for me to finish out my degree. And I love that. Once I had finished out my degree, I got the opportunity to open a company. As a Workers for Christ was the name of my company. I dealt with NFL and NBA athletes, and I had two Harlem Globetrotters, and I had a handful of football players, and getting them, through the NFL, helping them to understand the things that go on in the NFL, and it was great. It was great. Very stressful, but great. And as a matter of fact, some of my best friends right now are the players that I dealt with then.
Yeah.
And so I ended up divorcing, and I was still in the military, and I came to Illinois. And then coming to Illinois was another step in my life, which was the best thing in my life, because I moved to Illinois and I had met a young lady named Heather Cush, and uh,
I heard she's an amazing woman.
yes, I love that young lady, and it was great because
Yeah.
it's funny because she's 6 foot tall, and
Oh,
and so me being 5'5",
right,
I
right.
wasn't sure if she'd listen to my talk, what I had to say. But she was an All-American basketball player.
Oh, nice.
So, of course, the thing that I did was ask her if she wanted to play basketball.
There you go.
Well, you know what we have, you know what we do in Kentucky is we play basketball.
There you go.
So even though she's tall and she's a power forward, I beat her.
There you go.
Yes, I beat her.
We're
And
gonna
I say
have to
that,
we're gonna have to confirm that with her.
yes. And let me tell you, after I beat her, I asked her if she wanted to go out to dinner because she was very angry. And I
Oh yeah.
thought if there was going to be a next level of this, I think we need to stop playing.
Yeah.
And and from that point, she became one of my best friends.
There you go.
And then that blossomed into a great relationship, and it came to love.
Oh,
And there were things going on called Afghanistan, of course, and we had a lot of things going on with that, and there was just a lot of stress going on. Well, I
yeah.
asked the young lady if she would marry me months down the road, and it was done on New Year's Eve, and I sang to her.
Watch out. Real Casanova
Yeah,
here.
yes. As a matter of fact, her sister carried the ring, and her brother hit the music. I mean, we all had it together. Her mom had the camera going. We had all this set up because
There you go.
I'm a Southern boy, so I'd asked them by themselves if I could have her hand,
Right.
and when they said that I could, I told them, how I planned. Um, so I had gone ahead and um, asked her to marry me on Christmas Eve. And we were planning the next July to get married.
Hmm.
Well, everything changed. I'd been having a headache for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just stress. Thought
Yep.
it was just stress. All the stuff going on militarily and, change of, I moved to Kentucky, from Kentucky to Illinois, and, a lot of things going
And
on.
your business was going on at the same time as this too, right?
Well, I had just stopped that.
Oh, okay. You just stopped the business.
Yeah. So players, I still dealt with players, but I was no longer dealing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I my oldest daughter, I was still with dealing with her, making sure that everything was good with her, and so I had a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And one day I was on base, and
Mm-hmm.
uh I asked the lieutenant colonel, who of course has more rank than me. I asked him, I said, and I smile a lot and laugh. So I asked him, I said, Colonel, I said, is there any way I can get something stronger than Tylenol? Because that's not working
So
with,
so you were already like at a doctor's appointment at this time, or
well, I
what
didn't
was
have one. Didn't
okay.
have one. Didn't have one at all. I just couldn't take it. I could hear my heartbeat
Okay.
in my ears
Yeah.
at night. It
Yeah.
felt like an ocean whenever I'd roll over.
Yeah.
Um, I could hear the swishing in my ears whenever I would roll over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would keep taking Tylenol. And now I was a runner. I would run 6 to 10 to 12 miles a day because I ran marathons.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, it has to be, I'm in shape. I'm in great shape. I was preparing to run a marathon that I ran every year in Kentucky, the Kentucky Derby, um, you know, marathon that kicked off the Kentucky Derby.
Uh-huh.
So I ran 6 miles the day before when that I went and spoke with the lieutenant colonel.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
So
went into the hospital and talked to the doctor, or
yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. So smiling, I said, Colonel, I said, can I get something a little stronger than a Tylenol? And he said, what's wrong with you, Johnson? I said, my head's hurting, been hurting. I said, I have pulsating ear, hurting, and I can hear my heartbeat in my ears and things like that. And he said, no, that doesn't sound good. I'm not going to give you any Tylenol. And I said, you're not going to give me Tylenol? What type of colonel are you? What kind of doctor are you?
That doesn't sound good, man.
I know, man. I lost my mind. I turned around and left without saying anything else. Wrong thing to do militarily.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Very bad.
Yeah.
So,
I can't wait to hear what's next.
oh my goodness. The next thing that happened scared me because I never heard it. I was walking by to go into my office,
Mm-hmm.
and my major screamed my name. And he screamed, Johnson, you come in to my office and stand at attention. And so I did. And I said, for what? He said, you don't speak a word.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you can get an article. Now, articles are what can get you kicked out of the military. You get bad articles.
Or demoted,
Yes,
right?
or demoted.
Yeah.
Yes. Article 15s, these are things that get you sent to prison too.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I can give you an article right now for failing to follow the rules of rank above you. He said, you are about to go to a hospital off base right now. He said, and you are going to get escorted by the man to your left. I didn't know who he was. To this day, I can't remember who he was. I call him my angel because he stood up from the chair and he said, you will follow him to this military van and you will not speak. You will ride. And that's what I did. And when I got to the hospital, quite shaken.
Yeah.
Uh, First of all, I didn't know if I was going to get kicked out of the military. I didn't know if I was going to get, you know, articles. I didn't know if my rank I was going to lose, which of course means money taken away. I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And then, without me knowing him, I wasn't going to talk to him, you know. So he and I were sitting in the emergency room next to one another, not saying anything. We both had our military uniforms on, and they called my name. And I walked into the emergency room and into my side, and there was a nurse and a doctor. And they told me, after I told them what was going on, they gave me an MRI, and they had me sit in the room. About a half an hour later, they come back, and then they look at each other and they say, how do we say this militarily? Houston, we have a problem. And they say, then they said, what's the closest family member that you have? I said, I don't have any family near me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, why? And they said, we may have to do surgery immediately
Wow.
because you have a cerebral hemorrhage and you're bleeding, and it's about the size of a $50.
Wow. So did they say like how long you were bleeding for?
Yes. They said that the time when I had said that I had a headache for 3 months, they said I'd been bleeding for 3 months.
Wow.
And that's when the nurses asked me. The nurse said, do you know who God is? And I say, yes, I love Jesus. And she laughed because she said, he's got something special for you because there are some people that sit on a toilet and pass away with less of a hemorrhage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's one thing that kind of I was taken back by when it was 3 months. I was like, wow, 3 months. That's crazy. Because usually when it starts bleeding, it's kind of instantaneous reaction to the brain, to the body. It's just an instantaneous reaction. You need to seek immediate medical attention, and then it's just crazy that it was just, it must have been that slow of a bleed to where, over time the fluid was just building up gradually, slow enough to where it's causing just enough pressure over time to just give you that headache.
Right.
That way,
That's right.
That's crazy.
And I'm just so happy that it was slow
Yeah.
because moving to Illinois, I didn't have a family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I should have gotten
Mm-hmm.
was a family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that moves anywhere the first thing that they should get is a family doctor.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, once you got to the hospital and they told you that, and you said the closest family you had was, so how far? Illinois? That's like what, 6 hours, 8 hours away?
Right, right. My mother was about 8 hours away, and then my sister in Toledo was about 6.5 hours, and my new fiance, who I'd asked to just about a month and a half early to marry me, lived about 3 hours to go, 3 hours early or late away, and it was storming. It was storming everywhere,
Hmm.
and so uh, we didn't know what would happen. And I remember that because they put me in a hospital room and they gave me a shot to calm me. And at that point, I thought negatively. I said, I've been around the world with the military, uh, dealing with NFL and pro athletes. I've gotten the opportunity to meet some of the highest paid players. And here I am in this hospital room, and I'm going to die all by myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I fell asleep.
Yeah.
And then I was awakened from my sister and Heather, who my now wife, who was then my fiance, and her family laughing and meeting each other for the first time. And that to me it made me feel like felt like my whole body didn't exhale
Hmm.
because I knew that I wasn't going to die by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then shortly after that, my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt, Charlotte,
Hmm.
um, they came.
Yeah.
And then the doctor came uh, a few hours later to let them know that they could not do surgery on something that big, and that they had looked and they'd found another doctor um, uh, in Chicago. So we were going to have to drive about 3 hours to Chicago to have this surgery.
So they took you by ambulance, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I believe it was 2 days later on on April Fool's Day. And me being the jokester, as the nurse was rolling me in, I said, "Could you do me a favor? When you're taking out all of this fluid, could you give me the knowledge of Martin Luther, the
Right.
thoughts of Pluto? Could you give me, And I'm
Yeah.
joking, and I'm like, and when you cut off this hemorrhage, could you give me the great thoughts of, and so that's what I thought that was going to be all over
Yeah.
in about 10 hours. I thought it was going to be all over, and then
Hmm.
I would be running uh probably by in 2 days.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
It's not what it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so how long? So the surgery, the brain surgery. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. It's felt like we are having an earthquake there for a second.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, but the normal brain surgery, the AVM removal is what, 10 to 16 hours, something like that.
yes.
So So how long did the actual surgery take?
I think about that long,
Did
like
it?
14, 12.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened during the surgery?
Well, they went in and they didn't clip it or anything. They cut it. It was completely gone. So I don't have it at all.
Hmm.
A lot of people asked me if it was, clip or if I have anything in my head. He completely cut it. So
Hmm.
it's gone.
Hmm.
So blood goes up, turns around, and backs out. That's what it does because
Yeah.
it's not there.
Yeah.
So that happened, but unfortunately, during the surgery, because there was so much fluid, I had a major stroke. And now like I tell people, every stroke is a major stroke.
Hmm.
Everybody that has a stroke, it's a major stroke.
Hmm.
And so to me, that was a major stroke. And I remember waking up and I kept trying to tell my mother something is wrong. And every time I would say that, either my mother or Heather would put ice and rub it on my lips. That's not what I was trying to say. And I laugh at it now. But then that was quite angry. I was quite angry
All right.
because I was trying to say a word that
Hmm.
I cannot feel the right side of my body
Hmm.
at all. And
Hmm.
I can't say words.
Hmm.
Something is wrong, but it couldn't come out. It couldn't come out.
Now, so once that happened and you had the stroke and everything, and your family came about, what did they know, like the severity of the stroke and whatnot, or how did that play out?
Well, what happened then was they didn't tell them to tell me. I think they told them what happened, but they said if they didn't tell me, or if they told me in the hospital, it may cause me to have another major stroke. So they didn't tell me, and I was just so upset because I was like, you all should have let me in on the secret.
Why you keep these secrets from me at this
Yes,
time about me?
exactly.
Right?
Y'all are touching my hair and they cut out half of it. Some I and I couldn't touch it because my side of my body wasn't working.
Right?
All you had to do was help me.
No. No.
And when they finally let me out of the ICU, they sent me to step down unit, and then from there they sent me to the rehab center. And when they brought me to the rehab center, it was my mother, my aunt, my aunt Charlotte, my grandmother who's now passed away. It was Heather, her mother, and her father. And the doctor walks in, and we're sitting there. I'm in a wheelchair, and he says, "Yes, Mr. Johnson, you've had a stroke, and I was on your right side, and it deals with this, that, and the other." And he says, "You may not be able to speak clearly ever again because your eyes have crossed. You will never be able to read again. At that point, because of that, you will never be able to drive again. Mr. Johnson will also help you with Social Security because you will never be able to work again. Mr. Johnson, you'll never be able to walk without assistance again. Mr. Johnson, I know you're young, but unfortunately, your body will not be able to process and make enough to make children. So you will not be able to make children. And he looked at us and said, "Are there any other questions?"
That's straight to the point. That's pretty
To the
blunt.
point. Yes. And then he
Yeah.
turned away and left. And then everybody looked at me, and all I could do was cry.
Hmm.
That's all I could do.
Yeah.
All I could do was cry.
Yeah.
I'm 31 years old.
Yep.
At that time I thought, I'd found the woman of my dreams, and I was thinking, we could have, have a family, and, 2.5 kids, the dog, and, like it says, you're supposed to have. But here I am. Will she leave me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Will any of my family be here?
Hmm.
I'm never going to be able to speak. Don't
Hmm.
never, you know, am I going to be worth anything? And that first night in the rehab center, I really, and Christopher is reading this and talking about crying and understanding this, because the first night in the rehab center, I had a roommate. I was in the senior side. So my rehab roommate, nothing's wrong with age, but he was 70, and so we didn't have too much in common. And I was taken to the shower by a young lady. And so when I was taking a shower, the woman was taking me, and she was starting to talk to me. And I lifted my left hand. And she was like, "What's wrong?" And I just wanted to let her know, "You're not my girlfriend. You're not my wife. You know, I don't want to, I don't, this is not, I don't want to talk to you."
Don't talk to me while you're giving me a shower.
Exactly. That was it. Yeah. I didn't want to shower and talk. We're not talking beautiful nothings, that is not, this is not the way I wanted it.
Right. Right.
You know, this isn't what I pictured,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, of the opportunity to shower with somebody. This is
Yeah.
not what I planned,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that first night, well, actually, it was the afternoon before the shower. My mother was talking to me, and I was just looking out the window. And she didn't know until I told her later. I was trying to figure a way that I could jump out of that window and kill myself.
Yeah.
And I'm just being completely honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, something that a lot of people struggle with, that, that have people that have strokes, they definitely, it's a drastic change to go from being one way, being one person, and then essentially your life is just flipped upside down.
Right.
It's just flipped upside down. Now, this is where, the whole reason, the whole purpose I'm doing this show, man, is because I bring on people, for instance, like you and all the past guests that I bring on, is because I want people to know, hey, the current circumstance that you're in, you're not stuck in. Like I bring on survivors like you, like all my previous guests. Hey, this is what they went through. This is the trials and tribulations that they had.
Yeah.
This is how they overcame them.
That's right, brother.
They can do it too.
Yeah.
So can you.
That's right, brother. And that's the thing, as you and I have spoken in the past, to me, that's what this is about. It's a check at the door, and that was my check at the door moment.
Yep.
And my grandmother, the next morning, my grandmother she's, like I said, she's passed away now, but such a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother was 4'11", and she used to walk so little, and she walked in just by herself, and she grabbed my hand, and she said a prayer and gave me a kiss. Well, I couldn't talk, of course, clearly. But what I said was, Granny, why me?
Yep.
And my grandmother said? She said, baby, why not you?
There you go.
She said, God has something special for you.
There you go.
She knows God knows that you are stronger than this.
That your shoulders are broad enough.
Exactly.
There you go, man.
That's just what you said. Your shoulders are strong enough to take this. And man, it's like that was like stronger than any shot I could have gotten. And remember how I told you that military, what it did for me?
Mm-hmm.
It was more than just walking down that hall and speaking to that recruiter. It was more than that guy calling me Cannonball at 22 years old when everybody else was 18 and I had a family. It was more than that terroristic bombing. But that time when all of us are holding our right hand up and it says that and you say your name, but it says, I promise to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
And that day, I said to myself, I said, you know what, Brady, you've been attacked. You've been attacked. You don't know anything about this stroke. So this is foreign to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you are in a fight. This is a war. And so you have to defend
Your soul.
That's
Your
right.
Soul. There you go.
My soul. That's right. Foreign and domestic. So you have to fight for this thing. If you really want to win, be ready today.
There you go.
Every day after that, I promised myself that I am not going to give up. And you know what? Every day after that, I worked out like it was the last workout I'd ever had. The first thing I asked my fiance to do was I said, could you bring me CDs? Well, because I could sing. I've been able to sing my whole life. And she was like, wow, okay. Well, Boys to Men is my favorite group. So she brought in a CD. So she brought every Boys to Men CD. And I would ask every doggone time that a nurse would pass by, I would ask them to put a new CD in. And every day in the morning and the afternoon, I had to learn, I would have to go to speech. And the first thing that I got released from was speech. And she laughed because she said, I've never seen this. She said, you can request something by singing, but you can't quite talk it. She said, so I think we're going to have to go an extra week because I think you need to learn better how to talk. And we laughed about that. And she said, I've never seen this before. Somebody that learned how to sing before they were able to talk. And I said, well, I learned how to sing. So that's what I knew. So I got released from that. Then they ended up, as far as my walking and using my arm, they had to change from the PT that I had to a sports PT because they said, we realize that you're an athlete. You need somebody that'll challenge you. So for the next 6 months, that's what I did. And I had a cousin, Michael, my wife's cousin. She's my wife now. And I made a promise. This was the promise. Heather and I had a deal. She said, we'll push back our wedding from July 8th of this year to July 8th of the next year if I can walk with no aid down the aisle.
There you go.
And that was every day what I had in my mind. And so I had the thought of running again. And so when everybody was thinking about walking, I had run. And I thought about walking down the aisle. And I wanted an aisle long enough where when I walked, I could get started. And I also wanted to walk good enough where everybody didn't look like they were scared I was going to fall. That they could enjoy my walk.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And so in 6 months, I was able to drive. My stepmother, my father got remarried, and his wife worked at Social Security. So she told me they were that they were hiring. So I ended up working at Social Security. They hired me. So I got that job, even though the doctor told me I'd never work again.
There you go.
I worked another 6 months, 6.5 years. So that with the military gave me 20 years.
Hey.
So I was able, amen. So I was able to retire at 37 years old.
There you go.
I was able to drive again. I was able to run in a 5K with Heather's cousin Mike. I was able to, I have two boys.
Two boys, yeah. How old are your boys?
My boys are 13. That's Braden. He plays soccer. And I have a 9-year-old. That's Ben, and he's my linebacker. He's a football player.
There you go. There you go.
And the doctor said I'd never be able to make children. And I wrote a book.
Oh yeah, what's the book called? Tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, I wrote a motivational book.
Okay.
My book is called A Life of Comma, a soldier's story.
Okay.
A life of commas, a soldier's story. And what it comes from is when I was young, well, in high school, remember I told you education, I love it. My mother used to uh, teach college English. And so her and I would both get the opportunity. I would help her um, grade um, freshman college papers. And I would ask my mom, I say, why in the heck do freshmen in college have all of these periods all over the world? You know, they write 5 words and they put a period. And my mother would say, it's because all they know is how to end a sentence. They don't know how to keep it going. And for me, life, when you put a period to it, that's the end of it. That's death. But to me, with all of us, no matter your situation, no matter about your disability, no matter about your problems, if you wake up tomorrow, that's a comma. That is a comma. You have another opportunity to make it better. That's why I always say Thursday is the best day of the week. And if you ask me Friday, I will tell you Friday is the best Friday of the week. You
Because
see,
it's not the end.
it's not the end,
There you
it's a
go.
life of commas.
There you go.
We all have stories. You know, we don't all have to have strokes. We don't have to all have major disabilities. You see, because I know that there are some husbands and wives that are going with income problems. But you know what? If you have the ability to wake up tomorrow, we have the problem. We have the ability to have the best Friday tomorrow of the
There you go.
week.
There you go.
So tomorrow's a comma. That's my
Boom.
book.
Boom. Boom. Hey, and I will be posting your book in the description link in the YouTube video.
Thank you.
So that if people are interested in it, they can go ahead and find the link to your book in there. Now, Brady,
Yes.
it was amazing having you on the show. Do you have any concluding thoughts for the community?
I just, my biggest thing is just for us to continue to keep a smile on. We as a family, with disabilities, with problems, we all have to keep a smile on our face. I've learned through this situation, a smile on your face, sometimes it makes us say, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. You know, I've learned to laugh at myself sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that bad. It could always be worse. And that if we understand that and we understand ourselves, that we can be good at some things, but we are great at everything, that we're champions.
There you go. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
No doubt. No doubt.
All
No
right. My concluding thoughts are, I kind of said it in the beginning, but after, Brady came on and shared his testimony, I want to re-elaborate on it. I bring on guests every week that shares their own journey, and Brady kind of touched on it also. nobody's journeys are the same. So you can't necessarily relate full-heartedly to Brady's journey, but you might be able to relate a little bit. The whole journey, no doubt, is inspirational. So you can pull little pieces each and every week from each show. And those little pieces that you're able to pull out each and every week over time become something beautiful that you're able to look back on. So I hope that you continue to watch and continue to be inspired by the Determined Show. Again, Brady, I thank you so much for coming on. It was such a blessing to have you come on, man. Your story was fantastic. It really was.
It's but by God, but by God. And I thank you for having me on, brother. I thank you for having me on, brother.
Yeah. And next, actually, this upcoming Saturday at 11:30, I'm going to have on Lindsay Unger. She is a speech pathologist from UCSD Medical Center. She's going to be talking about speech therapy and giving a little bit inside trade secrets on how you can do your therapy at home. So make sure you tune in on Saturday.
Yes.
Now, Brady, you said you were going to go ahead and conclude this for us. So you want to do that for us, brother? Go ahead and say the prayer for us, man.
Yes, brother. Thank you, and I will.
All right.
All right, Lord, thank you for giving us the opportunity as brothers and sisters in your name, Lord, to listen, to learn from each other, for each other, and with each other. Lord, just ask for all of us to decrease so that you may increase, so that we can be the best for you. Lord, touch our brother, Lord, as he continues to get people to teach us what we need to teach, get learned. Lord, we thank you for all that you have given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, Brady. Take it easy, brother.
Thank you, brother.
All right, man.
All right.